This is Corolla DeVille. You're watching Inkwife TV. About 2 months ago, I began working on a Star Wars shoulder piece. The client wanted a Death Star and some TIE fighters and X-Wings fighting, and he wanted the Empire and Rebellion logos in it as well. So anyway, this is what we came up with. This is the third session on this piece. In the first session, I outlined all of the details with a 5-round liner, and I used very light gray wash. But you can see in the close-up shots where there's all the little details on the ships and little tiny stars are all outlined. Anyway, you can't see all the details yet because, they're not all there. But today we're going to change that and put some color. In the second session, I had gotten all the black and gray work done. Just when I do a galaxy, I like to do all the black work first and then lay my color in on top of that and add, more black later if I need to help saturate the dark areas. I always prefer to work from dark to light. Well, I won't say always. 95% of the time, I prefer to work from dark to light. So I go in and I'm laying a navy blue or cobalt blue over all of the black areas. I'm using a 15 curved mag to do this. My machine is probably running at about maybe 6 volts. Since we're going to be layering so many colors, one over the top of each other, it's important to me that I keep my machine low and do as little damage to the skin as possible. You can still saturate colors really well because it just keeps them laid in the upper layers of the skin, and you can layer inks on top of each other that way. I want to keep my cobalt blue colors up right next to the outlines of the ships and the lasers for the most part, because that will create greater contrast in the highlights of the ship and the background sky. We're dealing with outer space here, so we really need to pull in as much contrast and depth as possible. You want a really drastic difference from the darks to the lights. I didn't show it, but after I completed the cobalt blue, I went in with kind of a medium blue and filled in a lot of the gaps. But now I'm going back in with a third very light blue to finish filling in this background area. The galaxy, the background portion, is pretty much just going to be shades of blue. I didn't want too many colors in it because I'm wanting those colors to show up in the lasers and on the explosions and the spaceships. What you're watching now is I'm wanted to just sketch in the details on the Death Star because the Death Star doesn't need to be super duper detailed. Well, first of all, it's not really crazy detailed except for the drastic shadows. There's really just some etchy lines on it that kind of help it have its shape and form. I didn't want to put too much effort into it, but it still needed those shadows to give it its shape. In hindsight, I would have put those lines into the stencil and then I would have outlined them with the gray wash when I did it originally, but I thought to myself, I'm kind of wanting it to look painted anyway in the background because it's sort of supposed to go out of focus a little bit. So I'll just use marker, but I really wish that I had put it in there with a stencil, because at the end of the day, I just want to know that it's absolutely perfect. And when I'm leaving it just up to my brain to draw something in, I just feel like it's better if I feel like it would have been better if I had done it the other way. But it still turned out great though, and I'm really happy with it. Sometimes you feel like drawing it on, and sometimes you feel like stenciling it in. But next time, if I were to do this, I would stencil it in. So like I said, all we need for the details in the Death Star is some shadows, just to give it a little bit of shape. It's got the texture of the electronics all over the outside, so we needed to simulate that here. So I had drawn it on with a marker, and then took my 15 curved mag and a true gray ink and just started chiseling the shapes in a little bit. Here I'm going back with a lighter gray. Even though it really doesn't show up much on the skin, it does make a difference, and it is important. It really does make a difference in the long run. If you apply those lighter grays when they're needed, even though they're not super saturated, they're never going to look super saturated. They really are important in changing that skin tone and giving the tattoo a little more interest and finesse. So really all I'm working with on the Death Star is just various shades of gray, shading, and then some white highlights will go into it at the very end. And I'm going to apologize for my camera going in and out of focus. I understand it's annoying. It's annoying to me too. I'm just beginning and I'm not really gifted at filming quite yet. It's going to take me some practice to understand the camera and how to get it to stay in focus, and how to keep my head out of the shot. But I'm doing my best, guys, so please hang with me. Moving forward, we get to color in our lasers now. I went on the outer edge of each of the lasers with a regular, just an orange, and then filled in the inside of the beam with a golden yellow so that it had a glowing effect. Now we're putting the little details on our first X-Wing. I would say this X-Wing, this is what you're looking at. It's smaller than what you're seeing. I think it's probably maybe an inch in diameter, so he was really tiny. I first began by putting in some gray wash shadows, and now I'm going in with a true gray, which will contrast with the gray wash shadows to give it some shape. This little guy has red details on his wings, so we're going to add those in there, make sure we get them. And then he's got, of course, red jets coming out the back. A few highlights and he starts to really take form. I believe I'm using extra tight 5-round liner for all of these tiny details. I'm running my machine, for these white colors, I bet I'm running it at about 4.8 to 5 volts, because you want it very gently. If you lay them in too deep, they can blow and go in the wrong direction, so you barely want it on the surface of the skin. If you wipe and the color stays in good, you laid it in enough. Even though you can barely feel your needle just going tap, 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 you barely want to feel it caressing the top of the skin. when you're putting in these white details. You want to lay the color at the absolute top layer. You don't want to bury it and muddy it in the work that you've already done. When I went in with the blue, the dark blue in the background, I tried to go around the stars that I had drawn, and a lot of them really do disappear in the background. So when I'm starting an outer space piece, I like to draw way more stars with the gray liner. When I gray line the whole thing, I like to draw way more stars than I intend to use, because I know I'm going to lose a lot of them. It's just the way it's going to happen. So at the end of the tattoo, if I've done more than I expected, then I will end up with, enough to get the job done. When you begin to lay in the white on the stars, you really can see the contrast, and it starts to stand out against itself. I think it's important to create where your stars, even the little ones, to create where they're going to go in the first place, because it will turn out brighter if you haven't laid blues in all those areas and then just think you're going to put white on top of the blue to make your star. It's better if you take the time to tattoo around where the stars are going to go, and don't rush it. Put in the extra work, and then your stars will stand out so much brighter against your background. Put some little details in the TIE fighter. I mean, it was just tiny little shadows and highlights. Then I began the work on the foremost X-wing. I was using my 5-round liner to draw in all of these little details, so I believe I'm doing everything on this ship with a liner. I'm working in true grays. Start putting in the details on the little windows. As I was doing this tattoo and realizing how much layered detail was involved in a piece like this, I began to think back to when I was a teenager. And I was a teenager back in the 90s, and there for a while it was a cool thing to get little scenes painted on your fingernails, like beach scenes, sunsets, a cityscape. We still paint stuff on our fingernails, but back then is, I feel, kind of when it really began and started to be a trend. So being a cool teenager like I was, and also being someone who loved to paint, I thought, okay, let's see how detailed I can get on a fake fingernail. So I bought a package of fake fingernails, sat down, got the tiniest paintbrushes I could find, and just began painting and seeing how realistic I could get to, how much detail I could get into, something that's basically 1 inch by ½ inch, Anyway, I would spend hours working on those tiny, tiny little scenes, and that is how, just playing as a kid, I learned to pay attention to the detail. So it was really neat thinking back to how I did one thing when I was young, and surprisingly, because as I follow my passions and I follow my dreams, I find those things, those skills that I learned as a child, they naturally start coming back into play. And I don't have to, learn a new technique. I just go, oh, I already knew how to do this, so let's just apply it to what I'm doing now, that level of focus. Put it into the tattoo so we can get that really, really intricate detail. As I finish up on this today, you can see I've put in the lasers and the fire blaster coming off the front of the guns. I used the same orange and then filled in the inside of the laser with golden yellow to give it a nice glow. Here I do pull out my 15 curved mag because I didn't want all hard reflections off of the X-wings. I also wanted some, softer white spots. So I used the 15 curved mag. It's probably running again at about maybe 5 volts because I'm just barely wanting to feel it go tap, 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 tap on the skin. I want to feel every individual strike. If it's going too fast, it feels more like a blur. On this one, I want to feel the gentle taps, and I want to move very, very slowly, so they're going soft on the very top layer, but close together. There I go back again with my liner to finish up all the tiny reflections off of the X-wing. It's okay to go over your white several times as long as your machine is running very, very soft. And remember that when you first wipe the white ink off, pay very close attention to the saturation because that's the clearest picture you're going to get of what it truly is, because almost as soon as you wipe, blood starts seeping through and it completely changes color. And that can be frustrating to think you're getting white in and it just keeps turning colors, but understand as soon as you wipe it, that's what the color really looks like. And here I'm finishing up with some stars. And we're about done with the top half of this shoulder piece. I believe that I can complete it in one more session, but the guy has to wait about 2 months before I can get that final session in. But really, that's not that long, is it? So here in about 2 months, we will have the finished piece available. And hopefully my camera recording techniques will be improved by that time. So we will have a clearer picture and keep my head out of the way and keep it from going in and out of focus. But thank you guys for watching and listening to me talk nonsense, while I try to show you the tattoo that I'm working on. I will see you guys next week. Thank you for watching.